really ready for a confrontation with demons. It's totally out of our league. So we don't have any power to subdue beings that are outside of our realm, the spiritual realm. They can take over our bodies and we can't stop them. We are helpless. That is, unless you have Jesus. Told me I had a fresh battery. So if I go out one more time, I have to get another fresh battery. Only Jesus is able to the power in us is greater than the power that is in the world. And apart from Jesus, the demons are just going to take over. We are helpless to stop them. So only with Jesus do we have the power within to refute and to combat and to resist the outer spirits who want to dive in. He is the only one who is able to rescue us. This is what we're going to see in our text in chapter 5 of Mark, 1 through 20. And it's actually amazing because we're not just dealing with one demon. Last week when I mentioned this story, it was actually a precursor because we were going to handle it and look at it today. Verse 1, they went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. This man lived in the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been chained hand and foot, but he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and in the hills he would cry out and cut himself with stones. When he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. He shouted at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." For Jesus had said to him, "Come out of this man, you evil spirit." Then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" "My name is Legion," he replied, "for we are many." And he begged Jesus again and again not to send him out of the area. A large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hills, or hillside. The demons begged Jesus, "Send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them." He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Those tending the pigs ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they saw the man who had been possessed by the legion of demons sitting there, dressed and in his right mind. And they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people what had happened to the demon-possessed man, and told about the pigs as well. Then the people began to plead with Jesus to leave their region. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. Jesus did not let him, but said, "Go home to your family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." So the man went away and began to tell in Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and all the people were amazed. Our story is an amazing one because in the ministry of Jesus, he not only confronted sickness, not only confronted bad teaching, bad leadership, confrontation of people who were antagonistic toward him, confronted the weather, we find that Jesus also confronted the spirit world. And up until this time, you know, Americans, when we think about the spirit, we don't really think about demons being this real. It has been very low-key. In the Old Testament we see that, but in the New Testament, especially with Jesus, the encounters are so frequent and comprehensive in terms of the scope. Like, he doesn't just deal with one or a few or this kind or that kind, he deals with all of them. And we see that it wasn't Jesus who initiated this contact, as we see in verses 1 and 2. They went across the lake to the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus got out of the boat, a man with an evil spirit came from the tombs to meet him. Now, remember, the incident that occurred before this is that Jesus calmed the storm. And even before they got into the boat, Jesus said, let us go to the other side. It was Jesus who initiated this trip to the other side of the lake. We don't know why, in the beginning, we don't know why Jesus said we need to go to the other side. He said we had to go over to the other side. And of course the disciples cooperated with him, and the storm came and he had to stop the storm in order to survive. So they get to the other side, finally realizing why they had to get there. Because he had an appointment with a demon-possessed man, or if you read Matthew, 2 demon-possessed men. Luke and Mark only address the one person, or report of the one person. But we know that in actuality there were 2 men that Jesus cast the demons out of. Matthew tells us that. So Jesus initiated this trip. He goes over to the other side, and this man comes to him. Well, evil comes to him through a man. So when Jesus gets there, he has to deal with this evil spirit through this individual, or 2 individuals. We're just going to deal with this man right here in our text. So the man was being carried by the evil spirit and comes to Jesus, and we are told in verse 3 that this man lived in the tombs and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain, for he had often been chained hand and foot, and he tore the chains apart and broke the irons on his feet. No one was strong enough to subdue him. He had supernatural strength because he had demons living inside of him. He had strength for the wrong reasons, and he didn't use his strength for good. He was terrifying the townspeople. They forced him out of their comfort zone. When they tried to contain him with chains, it didn't work. He broke those chains. I mean, that would be really frightening. Just like something out of a movie. I mean, Incredible Hulk. How are you gonna subdue him with a chain? No. What else could they do? I think the moral consciousness of the people would not allow them to kill this man. So they just pushed him aside. They did their best to avoid him. And conscientiously, the man, knowing that he was rejected, went to a place where he wouldn't be rejected. Burial grounds. Imagine the helplessness the man felt being rejected by people and unable to get the demon or demons out of his body. If I think about the status of this young man, or however old he was, imagine just being trapped in a body and unable to do anything. I mean, desperately wanting the demon to be out of his body, but couldn't do anything about it. There must have been a great sense of lack of control and desperation, a hopelessness. Night and day among the tombs, it says, and in the hills, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Now, the description here is pretty peculiar because here is a demon-possessed man, and his spare time or his regular time, whatever time, all the time, he would cry out and cut himself with stones. Now, crying out, I can understand. Somebody help me. Please help me. But cutting himself is a different story. In reference to cutting oneself, in the Old Testament, we get a reference of cutting when we read about Elijah and the confrontation of the priests of Baal. The priests of Baal, when they were having a contest with Elijah, were crying out to their God and saying, hear us, come and consume this sacrifice with fire. They kept crying out, but their God didn't hear. So Elijah kept teasing them, cry louder, call louder. And they kept doing that. And then they cut themselves to bleeding. Must have been some sort of indication and symbol to the gods that they were serious. We offer ourselves, offer our blood. And this is the same thing that happened with people who are in desperation, who need attention. One step short of suicide, people who are desperate actually cut themselves. And I've heard of a number of documentaries where teenagers would cut themselves. I mean, they had marks all over. And you go, well, what kind of demented strategy is that? Well, if somebody's suffering on the inside, it's just natural to them to, in some way, hurt themselves. And cutting themselves is one of them. You might tattoo yourself, you might put, nose rings, you might have 15 earrings, making a statement of, I'm hurting. Well, this guy had nothing to show for his desperation except for crying out and cutting himself, and he was putting himself in the position of everybody else who was desperate, like idol worshippers. So night and day he would do this. He must have had marks all over his body, very, very obscene looking. Now, if you reference this passage in the book of Matthew, it also says that he was naked. So he was running around naked, marks all over his body because he was cutting himself, screaming at the top of his voice, unkempt, hair is out of control, didn't shave, so it's all over the place, long, didn't shower, and that's how he was roaming around. It must have been really, really scary for people from far away to see him, so they go the other way. And in the meantime, this individual is hurting, aching, desperately seeking somebody to rescue him. So when he sees Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. Now, what we have to discern from this text is who's doing what when. Because we have no idea. We have to surmise from the text who's in charge. Is it the demon who's doing it? Is it the man who's doing it? So it says when he saw Jesus from a distance, he ran and fell on his knees in front of him. So for me, even though that sounds like the man is doing it, initially, most likely it's not the man who's doing it. Why? Because they didn't know who Jesus was. He didn't know who Jesus was. So it must have been the demon who recognized Jesus, runs to him, and gets on his knees. And the demon is the one who is controlling the man and showing Jesus respect. It had to be initiated by the demon because of the nature of the non-relationship that this man had with Jesus. Didn't even recognize him. And then it says, shouting at the top of his voice, "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." Now that sounds like a person who actually knew him. And it also sounds like a person who's very, very scared of him. "What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Swear to God that you won't torture me." So, what do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? Well, Jesus is called the Son of the Most High God, which means that they knew exactly who he was. The demon knew exactly who he was. Jesus knew his name, Son of the Most High God. Knew exactly the relationship that he had with the Heavenly Father. And then it's followed by, "Swear to God that you won't torture me." Now Jesus wasn't going to torture the man. Why would he be worried about Jesus torturing him? So all of this had to be the conversation of the demon with Jesus. It's the demon who is causing the man to bow. It's the demon who is addressing him as Jesus, because the man didn't know his name, nor did he know the title that he had and the relationship that he had with heaven. And then he was certainly concerned about whether he was going to be tortured or not. So all of this was initiated by the demon, and the man was just a puppet. Again, the desperation and the need to be liberated from the hold of the demon of this man. What we also need to notice in this text is the respect that the demon gives Jesus. They recognize his authority, and I'm switching from singular to plural because it's all related, so it's actually synonymous. That he automatically gives Jesus recognition and respect for the position that he holds, and addresses him as such, and then even physically demonstrates that they are subservient to Jesus the deity. In verse 4 it says, "For Jesus had said to him, 'Come out of this man, you evil spirit.'" So there was a command given, and the response to that was, "Don't torture us," or "Don't torture me." And it's rare that the demons don't obey Jesus the first time. It's very, very rare, but it happens here. In other places, when Jesus says come out, they just come out. As individuals, maybe even as 2 or 3. But in this case, even though Jesus told them to come out, he didn't come out. First time obedience didn't apply here. Because they could always make an excuse. Who's he talking to? Right? Talking to me? Talking to you? I mean, there's a number of them in there we'll see. And so we're going to address that, but he doesn't come out the first time. And then he does a very, very strange thing in verse 9. Jesus asks him, "What is your name?" Like, what does that matter? Now, the curious thing is Jesus talking to the man, or is Jesus talking to the demon? One of the most intriguing things in the Bible that I intend to study, but I haven't studied it yet, I mean, not to the degree that I want to. Usually when I read the Bible through the year, or through the Bible in a year, I set a theme, and with that theme, I notice the scriptures, all the scriptures that are pertaining to that theme. So I did one with food. That was amazing. I did that with marriage. That was also amazing. I'm doing right now with faith. Faith is always amazing. But I keep running into names. So I decided that next year I'm going to do my Bible reading with the name as a theme. So I'm going to notice all the passages and highlight all the passages concerning names. And here, Jesus, and I'm getting a precursor of my study, then Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" Why is that so important? What is a name anyway? So let's just, can't deal with it a whole lot, but name is actually a summary. Okay? A name is a summary of whatever it is. So when we say something like this is a pen. This is a pen. We're actually summarizing this. We're saying this is a pen, it has ink in the middle, it has a clicker, it has a holder, and then we can describe generally that way, this thing that way, and then we have to describe specifically how this is different than other pens. If it's not, if it's a Bic, plastic cap, plastic this, and there's no clicker, you take the cap off and put it in the front. That's it. This one, however, is very, very different. It has other things in it. It has grips, rubber grips on the side. It has a black tip, which we use as a stylus on an iPad or whatever. And then the pen comes out of the middle through it. So it's a dual functioning pen. Okay, I have to summarize that. So if I were to give it a new name, I would call this a stylus pen. Descriptive, right? But that's a summary of all of these things. Well, if I told you my name is Jay, that would be a summary. Because I have to tell you that I am 5'8", that I am a male, I am regular build, and all the attributes and characteristics of who I am. And I would have to, every time you say, okay, who is he? And I would have to name all of those things in order to say that that's who he is. It's much simpler to say his name is Jay. Just summarizing. And then you get to know the characteristics little by little, or by asking me, or by observing me. And we are like that, all of us. We can't just say, that's Jeff, and know exactly who he is. It's a summary. Then we got to watch him, we have to ask him, we have to talk to him, all of that stuff. So why is that important? Well, what I heard, and it is so true, a long time ago, said the sweetest word that you will ever hear is your name. The sweetest word that you will ever hear is your name. That's why they made experiments. If you've ever seen this video, they made a documentary about fire in the building and with kids. And they turned on the light, and the kids wouldn't wake up. They wouldn't wake up for 3.5, 4. They just ignored it. I mean, turned over and, put the pillow over their head. If this was a real fire, they would have died. And so they were shocked. And you know what the solution was? Their solution was, we're going to create an alarm with audio. And when the alarm is set off, it will say, John, get up. This is your dad. It's a fire. And within seconds, they're up. But the name made the difference. And the voice of the parents made the difference. And they would wake up just like that because their name was called. Okay, now let's transfer that to Lazarus, who was in the grave. Right? He was in the grave, and what did Jesus say? Lazarus, come out. Just imagine if he said, come out. Everybody would come out. Look at all these people. Now they're all alive. Oh. No. I just meant him. Go back to dying. All right, we're dead. Jesus called Lazarus specifically, and Jesus made sure that Lazarus heard his voice, and Lazarus did hear his voice, and he woke up and he came. So Jesus here is saying, your name is significant. I want to know your name. Whether it was toward the man or toward the demon, he asked him. And then, of course, the demon spoke. He said, my name is Legion. He replied, for we are many. Now we know that there were many. And then he says, he begged Jesus again and again not to send them out of the area. Wow, that's amazing. What significance do demons have inside of the body of somebody else? Why do they want to be in the body of people rather than roaming free? I mean, wouldn't they have cabin fever? I mean, you know what cabin fever is, right? You're stuck in the house all day and you want to get out. Unlike the guy who was playing video games for 3 straight days and then at the end of the 3rd day, died. He didn't eat, he didn't drink. He was so engrossed in his video game that he didn't eat, drink, and so on the 3rd day, he died. He was found in the house. What a crying shame. Wouldn't they have cabin fever if they were in the body of a person roaming around inside this body? And they're asking Jesus not to send them out. And they could have left by themselves, but they didn't want to get out. Very strange. There must have been some significance in the body that they liked. If it is true that they like it inside of a body, some of us need to be very, very careful. And the reason why I say some of us is because Christians can be demonized. The Holy Spirit resides in there. So when a demon tries to come in, he says, nope, occupy. I'm here, and you can't come in. But if a person is not a believer and the Holy Spirit is not inside of the person, then it's fair game. As a matter of fact, the cleaner you are inside, the better for them. Whatever that means. Because Jesus says, oh yeah, when they leave, they go to different places and they don't find anything, they just come back to the same home. And not only that, but they bring other wicked demons with them. And now instead of having just one demon, the person has 5 or 7 or 15. And that is a shame. But here, there's a confession that this man had a legion of demons in him. A legion is between 2 to 5,000. 2 to 5,000 demons. How do they shove them all in there? You know that space is not a problem in the spiritual world, only in the physical world. So then, in verse 11, a large herd of pigs was feeding on the nearby hillside. The demons begged Jesus, send us among the pigs, allow us to go into them. He gave them permission, and the evil spirits came out and went into the pigs. The herd, about 2,000 in number, rushed down the steep bank into the lake and were drowned. Now we know at least the minimum number of demons that were in the person's body, 2,000. I think some of the demons had to have bunk beds.